Thank you. In the darkest days of the Roman Empire, there was a particularly cruel emperor, and he had a way with captives. He would starve a lion, and then he would put a captive in the arena, and you know what happens. And this happened time after time until one day he brought in a Jewish captive from Judea. And the lion had been starved for many days, went into the arena, saw the Jewish captive, started scratching the sand, and then, just as the lion was about to pounce, the Jewish captive rushed to the lion and whispered something in his ear. And the lion slinked away with its tail, slinked away. And the audience, the crowd, they went wild. And the emperor, he was very curious. He called the Jewish captive and he said, "What did you tell him? Tell me what you told him." And the Jewish captive said, "I told him he'd have to give a speech after dinner. Now, you're about to have dinner, and I'm not going to hold you for very long. So I want to speak as briefly as I can because I have to go to other business, but I think it's very important that we address this business, and I thank you, Gideon Sar, for convening this important meeting, and I thank you for coming here. And the issue that I want to address is the consequence of anti-Semitism, not only for the Jewish people, but for human society. Now, we've been facing this disease. It's a virulent disease that is going on for several millennia. And of course, we paid a horrible price in the journey of our nation for anti-Semitism. But so have other countries, and that is very clear, not only in the history of the greatest anti-Semitic burst of violence, which is the Holocaust. 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, but 60 million died during the war that it inspired. My father was 23 years old. He was a historian, among other things, of anti-Semitism. And when Hitler rose, he said that the threat that racial anti-Semitism poses to the world is not the threat only to the Jews, but the threat to all of humanity. Because, if I paraphrase what he said, in 1933, he said, "What starts with the Jews will not end with the Jews." And unless we inoculate and convince the rest of free societies of the danger to them of this anti-Semitic virulence, then it will spread and claim many, many, many millions of lives. I think the history of the world would have been different if these and other warnings had been heeded in time. Well, we have now a surge of anti-Semitism as we speak. And those who expected, after the tremendous anti-Semitic savagery of Hamas on October 7th, the most savage attack on the Jews since the Holocaust, that it would cause a decline of anti-Semitism, well, people who harbored those hopes have been wildly disappointed. Because what we see is the exact opposite. We see demonstrations, protests in the capitals of the West and other countries that celebrate these murderers, these rapists, these baby burners, these hostage takers. Celebrate them. We see not only the burning of Israeli flags, and this is consequential. You see the burning of American flags, British flags, Canadian flags, French flags. That's not an accident, because the people who are leading this charge are basically challenging Western civilization or free societies as we understand them. When you celebrate these killers, you're celebrating the complete breakdown of civilized society as we understand it. So what Israel is fighting here is not merely a seven-front war, which I'll have to attend to in a few minutes, but an eight-front war. It's the war, ultimately, of civilization against barbarism. Now, how does this war proceed? There are certain patterns of anti-Semitism that we've seen down the ages. It's always accompanied And usually it's preceded by vilification and demonization. So you're familiar with these calumnies that were leveled at the Jewish people. We poisoned the wells in medieval times. We take Christian children, the blood of Christian children, and bake matzos for Passover with them. We spread vermin. By the way, these lasted right into modern times. If you look at Nazi propaganda, they said exactly the same thing. So you dehumanize a group of people in human society, and you prepare them for the kill, for the butchery. That is always the case. You always demonize before you annihilate, or before you seek to annihilate. And that was essentially what happened to us, right up to the worst pogrom of them all, the Holocaust. What we saw recently here was an attempt to recreate the Holocaust. Chancellor Scholz of Germany visited me shortly after the October 7th massacres, and he visited the sites. Many of you may have seen them as well. And he said, they're just like the Nazis. True, with one difference. The Nazis tried to hide their crimes. These people went with GoPro cameras, and they publicized it for the entire world to see. They were very proud of what they were doing. But other than that, he was exactly right. Had they had their way, they would have slaughtered every man, woman, and child in this state, and every Jew around the world. They openly say that. Their patron, Iran, openly says that. As you have these talks now with Iran, between Iran and the United States, the Ayatollah Khamenei tweets, he's a great tweeter, by the way, he tweets, Israel has to be annihilated. The cancer of the Jewish state has to be uprooted. He's open about it. This is the scourge that we are dealing with. And of course, many are taken in by these protests or are cowed by them. More than anything is they're cowed by them. They fear them. They want to control the rampant attacks that are then directed at them for having relations with Israel, for having contacts. And what you try to do is you want to corral your victim, but in fact, your countries are the victim. Because what is being done is an attempt to deny Israel, and in fact to deny all free societies, the ability to fight these barbarians. How do they do that? Well, the first thing they say is, you're slaughtering people deliberately. That's a complete destruction, a complete annihilation of the laws of war. If I had to say, what are the laws of war? If I had to boil it down to one idea, that idea is that you divide the world into two. On one side are combatants, on the other side are non-combatants. And you can go after the combatants, but you don't deliberately cross the line against non-combatants. Well, the terrorists have figured that out. The radicals have figured that out. So what they do is they hide behind civilians. They use them as human shields. And when you go after the terrorists, because otherwise, you'll give them immunity and they can do anything. They can fire rockets at our cities, trying to kill our civilians, and hide behind their civilians. That's what is called a double war crime. And when you try to target the civilians, you invariably hit civilians. That is, when you try to hit the terrorists, you invariably hit non-combatants. In 1944, the Royal Air Force, the British Air Force, tried to take out the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen, perfectly legitimate target. But the British pilots missed their target, and they hit a children's hospital nearby, and I think 70 or 80 children were horribly burned to death. That's not terrorism. That's not a war crime. That's the incidental casualties of civilians that accompany any war. But what the terrorists do, and what the war criminals do, is deliberately use civilians as a human shield. That's basically the tactic of Hamas. That's what they do. So in a very tight arena in Gaza, which is closed, it's a closed arena. There is nothing like that in the world. You don't see it in other war theaters. Millions move. They move from the Ukraine war arena. They move from the Syrian civil war arena. They move. In Gaza, it's locked. Not because we locked it. It's locked. I'm in the foreign ministry right now. so I have to be a diplomat. You explain later, Gidon, why the southern border is locked. We didn't lock it. People want to leave, but they can't. So it's the biggest open jail, open-air jail in the world. As far as we're concerned, we let anybody leave. If you want to leave, leave. But they can't. And within that locked arena, it's a very small place. It's like one of your big towns, big metropolises, okay? Within that, there are war zones, combat zones. And Hamas is trying to lock the Palestinians, civilian population, within the place where we conduct the war. That's what they do. How do they lock them in? They shoot them if they want to leave. That's how the war began. They just shot them. We eventually were able to create safe zones to get the population out. By the time we got to Rafah, 1.4 million of Gaza's 2.2 million people were in Rafah. And we were told by the entire international community, including our good friends in the United States, don't go into Rafah. And I said, well, we have to go into Rafah. It's like the Allies finishing off 80% of the German army, and they're told, don't go into the last part, don't go into Berlin, and don't finish the last 20%. We have to do that. Otherwise, Hamas will be there, and they'll murder again, and kidnap again, and rape again, and behead again. And they say so. That's what they intend to do. They said, don't go in there, because if you go in there, there'll be thousands, somebody said, 20,000 civilian casualties. They have nowhere to go. I said, of course they have a place to go. That place is right on the beach. It's 2 kilometers away, on the beach. And we went in, and they all went to the beach within 6 days. And the number of civilian casualties we had in Rafah was practically zero, because they all left. So the first lie that is put against us is that we are deliberately killing civilians. We are texting civilians by the millions. Millions of text messages, millions of phone calls, cell phone calls, millions of pamphlets. Please get out, because we are going to come in. And that's why the ratio of non-combatants to combatants killed in the most dense urban warfare arena in modern history is the lowest in the Gaza war. Not only do I say that, but John Spencer, who's the foremost expert on this in West Point, on urban warfare, he says there's never been anything like this. Anything like this. The Israeli army that is so maligned has gone out of its way in ways that no other army, and Israel has gone in the way of no other country, more than any other country, and more than any other military, to prevent civilian casualties. And Hamas has gone out of its way to create civilian casualties, because they want to harness and promote the anti-Semitic sentiments that you see in the West. That's the first lie. Here's the second one. The second one is that we have a policy of starvation. Did you hear that? You didn't? That's the current fad, the current lie. Well, that's false too. From day one, or the early days of the war, we decided on a policy. We are going after Hamas. We're not going after the civilian population, both in allowing it to leave the theaters of combat, but also by supplying them with essential requirements: food, water, medicine. That's what international law and common sense requires. So we did. So we supplied them with about 1.8 million tons, 1.8 million tons of food and aid. That's an enormous amount. And that's why you didn't have mass starvation at all. In fact, I'll give you one simple indication of that. We take thousands of prisoners. We sort them out into civilians and into combatants, and we photograph them. And you can see those photographs, those videos. What's the first thing you do when you take a prisoner in Gaza? The first thing you do is you tell them, take your shirt off. We want to see that there's no suicide vest. Thousands and thousands of prisoners have taken their shirt off. And you don't see one, not one, emaciated. Not a single case. From the beginning of the war till the present. In fact, you see quite the opposite, because you don't get that much exercise, certainly not in tunnels. But you get food. And we're accused of starvation. So what happened? As we were supplying these aid trucks, Hamas looted them. They took a good chunk for themselves, and the remainder they sold to the civilian population at exorbitant prices. And thereby, they funded their own recruits, new recruits, because we were able to kill a lot of terrorists. So they have to replenish their war machine, their terrorist machine, their terrorist army. So they used the aid to continue the war. And we said that has to stop. And in the last ceasefire, in which we got the hostages, which I'll talk about in a minute, we made a decision. Let us put the aid in such a way that we separate the aid from Hamas. We give it to the civilians and not to the terrorists. And we worked out a plan with our American friends to have controlled distribution sites where an American company would distribute the food to Palestinian families. It's not a truck with flour bags. It's a package for food for a family for a week. You come in, you get it. It's very hard for Hamas to steal it, especially because we guard these positions. Well, we tried the first one. We're going to put many today. There was some loss of control momentarily. Happily, we brought it back under control. We're going to put many more of these. And the idea is basically to take away the humanitarian looting as a tool of war of Hamas, to give it to the population, eventually to have a sterile zone in the south of Gaza where the entire population can move for its own protection. And then we basically, how shall I say this? We leave the fish without the water. We leave the Hamas terrorists without the tool for governance which they use, and that's basically the humanitarian aid that they loot. And this is another lie. It just spreads like wildfire. Just spreads like wildfire, because in this media age, you can put out a lie and it spreads throughout the globe, and you have a hard time putting it out. The best way that we can win the information war and win the war against anti-Semitism is winning the war quickly. You win the war quickly. That's what we're trying to do. Win the war quickly, free our hostages, destroy Hamas. The two go hand in hand, because you don't get the release of hostages unless you apply military pressure. And then, of course, make sure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to Israel in the future. This is our goal. So far, we've liberated 197 hostages. Of them, 147 are alive, out of a total of 255. There's still 20 live hostages there. That we know for certain, 20 live hostages. And the family of one is here with us today. This is Edith and Kobi Ohel. They're the parents of Alon Ohel. He's a gifted musician. I think they brought a piano here today in his honor. And that's a moral injunction for us to get them out, to get him and his friends out. And we also have here Tal Shoham, whom I met after we secured his release in the last release. And he showed exceptional leadership in impossible circumstances, true human courage. And we also secured the release of his wife, Adi, and his son and his daughter. We got them out. And we intend to get them all out. So these are our war aims. And the way we do it is a combination of military action and the deprivation of humanitarian looting from Hamas. You don't know this. If you're watching the international media, if you listen to the protesters, you don't know this. The protesters themselves, many of them don't even know what they're chanting. When they're chanting Free Palestine, they're saying, really, destroy Israel, destroy the Jews. It's the modern equivalent of Heil Hitler. That's what it says. When they say from the river to the sea is a few kilometers here, and the river is a few kilometers there. It means the end of Israel. That's what they're chanting. So they bought the demonization. They bought the vilification of the one democracy that is fighting a just war with just means. And here's what happens when this spreads and it goes to the ICC. The ICC, the court that was supposed to establish really after the Holocaust in order to prevent another Holocaust, and the ICC declares that I and former defense minister, effectively, the state of Israel, they'll issue more decrees. We're the war criminals. What does it say to democracies? What does it say to free societies? It imperils your right of self-defense. It means that this tactic of implanting yourself in a civilian population while sending rockets and murderers to murder civilians, as you hide behind your own civilians, you are given effective immunity. And once this idea is implanted, it will spread and spread and spread. It'll spread to your own societies. So for the future of civilization, we can't have that. I think Pope John Paul had once said that the greatest threat of terrorism is that it murders man's sense of sin. It just says everything is allowed. Everything is allowed, and you can victimize and demonize anyone. You can say it's just, we can do this. No, you can't. You can't deliberately target civilians. You can't deliberately murder men, women, and children. You can't come and execute in cold blood. In Washington the other day, this beautiful young couple, beautiful couple. I met them when I visited Washington. And they were killed only because they were Jews, and that's okay, because Israel is doing the same. No, we're not. We're not doing the same. We take pains not to do the same. We go out of our way to create safe zones, to give humanitarian aid, to clear out areas from, to make sure that civilians leave. That's what we try to do. And the ones who are trying to impede it are Hamas. Hamas and their patron Iran that calls outright for the annihilation of Israel, as do the Houthis, as do the other proxies. But when they say that they're going to murder us, we're just the front line. We're the first position. By the way, they say death to Israel, death to America, but they also intend to deal with everything in between. They're quite open about it. And so this is a battle not merely for the physical survival of the Jewish state, and we will not be destroyed. That I assure you. We have the power and the means to protect ourselves, and we do so. But it's also a battle for the protection of all free societies. Don't succumb to the vilification. Don't succumb to the demonization. Don't succumb to the lies. Don't succumb to this complete inversion of morality. Because once you do, there's no end to it. And once you do, your societies are in great, great danger. I urge you to fight anti-Semitism not only because it's right. I urge you to fight anti-Semitism because it will save you. That's all I have to say, and unfortunately I have to go back to other things, but I really want to thank you for coming here, giving of your time from various countries and from various Jewish communities. And the last thing I want to do is to address the leaders of Jewish communities who came for us from around the world. The most important thing you have to do in fighting anti-Semitism is to stand up and not be coward. People value and respect people who stand up for their own rights. Do not be afraid to speak up. Speak up, stand up for the truth, stand up for the Jewish people, stand up for civilization. And I ask that all of you do the same. Thank you.